Did you know? Napoleon Bonaparte is widely believed to have been exceptionally short, a perception reinforced by historical caricatures and the term Napoleonic complex. However, this popular belief is largely a myth. Napoleon was actually around 5 feet 6 inches, 1.70 meters, tall, which was taller than, or at least average for a French man of his era. The misconception likely originated from a combination of British propaganda, which often depicted him as diminutive to mock and undermine him, and a misunderstanding of the differing measurement systems. The French pouce, inch, was slightly larger than the British inch, leading to a miscalculation of his true height when recorded by British sources. So, while the Little Corporal nickname stuck, it wasn't a literal description of his stature, but rather a term of endearment or a reference to his previous military rank. In Victorian England, linen was considered a highly fashionable and desirable fabric, often associated with cleanliness, purity, and status. While cotton became more widely available with industrialization, linen retained its prestige due to its fine texture, durability, and the intricate processes involved in its production from the flax plant. The wealthy elite adorned themselves in elaborate linen garments, from delicate undergarments to crisp shirts and elegant dresses. It was also extensively used for household items like bedding, tablecloths, and towels, where its ability to be starched and bleached to a pristine white was highly valued. The emphasis on cleanliness and proper appearance in Victorian society further cemented linen's status as a good fabric, symbolizing refinement and a well-kept home. During the tumultuous French Revolution, the guillotine became the primary method of execution, and surprisingly, it was initially seen as a more humane form of capital punishment. Before its widespread adoption, executions in France were often brutal and prolonged, involving methods like hanging, burning, or dismemberment, which could cause immense suffering. Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin, a physician, advocated for a more efficient and less painful method of execution, believing that death should be as quick and painless as possible, regardless of the crime or social status. The guillotine, with its heavy blade dropping swiftly to sever the head, was designed to achieve instant death, making it a more humane alternative by the standards of the time. Despite its grim association with the Reign of Terror, its invention was rooted in Enlightenment ideals of equality and minimizing suffering. The ancient Maya civilization, known for its advanced writing system, mathematics, and astronomy, had a fascinating and somewhat unusual beauty standard. They believed that a flattened forehead was a sign of beauty and high social status. To achieve this desired look, Mayan parents would deliberately reshape the skulls of their infants. Shortly after birth, when a baby's skull was still soft and pliable, a board or cloth would be tightly bound to the forehead, applying gentle pressure over an extended period. This process, known as cranial deformation, would gradually flatten the forehead, giving the individual a distinctive elongated head shape. This practice was common among the elite and was seen as a way to differentiate them from commoners, highlighting their noble lineage and enhancing their perceived attractiveness and wisdom. Alexander the Great, one of history's most brilliant military commanders and conquerors, had an extraordinary tutor in his youth, the renowned Greek philosopher Aristotle. From the age of 13 to 16, Alexander received private tutelage from Aristotle, who instructed him in a wide range of subjects, including philosophy, ethics, politics, medicine, and science. This unique education profoundly influenced Alexander's intellectual development and worldview. Aristotle instilled in him a love for knowledge, a respect for Greek culture, and a curiosity about the natural world. While Alexander went on to become a military genius, Aristotle's teachings likely shaped his strategic thinking, his approach to governing conquered lands, and his ambition to spread Hellenistic culture throughout his vast empire, making him a king who was also a scholar. The magnificent Inca Empire, which flourished in the Andes Mountains of South America, achieved remarkable feats of engineering and administration despite lacking a traditional writing system. Instead of alphabets or hieroglyphs, the Inca used a sophisticated system of knotted strings called quipu, also spelled quipu, to record information. Quipus consisted of a main horizontal cord from which numerous colored, knotted cords hung vertically. The type of knot, its position on the cord, and the color of the cord all conveyed specific numerical or historical data. Scholars believe quipus were used for census records, tax accounts, astronomical observations, and possibly even narratives. This complex system allowed the Inca to manage a vast empire, organize their economy, and transmit crucial information across their extensive network of roads, showcasing an ingenious solution to record-keeping in the absence of written language. The ill-fated voyage of the RMS Titanic in 1912, often remembered for its tragic sinking, also carried a significant number of honeymooning couples among its wealthy passengers. For many, the maiden voyage of the unsinkable luxury liner was seen as the perfect start to their new lives together. Approximately 13 newlywed couples were on board, celebrating their honeymoons. They occupied some of the ship's most lavish suites, enjoying the opulent amenities, gourmet dining, and elegant social events. The dreams of these honeymooners, filled with hope and romance, were tragically cut short when the ship struck an iceberg and sank. Their presence on the Titanic adds another layer of poignancy to the disaster, highlighting the personal stories of love and new beginnings that were irrevocably lost in the icy waters of the Atlantic. Leonardo da Vinci's iconic masterpiece, the Mona Lisa, famously lacks eyebrows and visible eyelashes, a detail that has puzzled art enthusiasts for centuries. Contrary to popular belief that Leonardo simply didn't paint them, historical evidence and forensic analysis suggest that the eyebrows and eyelashes were originally present but have faded or been removed over time due to various factors. It's believed that repeated cleaning attempts and restoration efforts throughout the painting's long history may have inadvertently worn away these delicate details. Additionally, in the early 16th century when the painting was created, it wasn't uncommon for women of high status to pluck their eyebrows as a fashion trend. Regardless of the exact reason, the absence of these features contributes to the Mona Lisa's enigmatic gaze, adding to the mystery and allure that have captivated viewers for over 500 years. In the ancient Olympic Games of Greece, athletes competed in the nude. This practice was a distinctive feature of the early games, deeply rooted in Greek culture and philosophy. The word gymnasium, where athletes trained, comes from the Greek word gymnos, meaning naked. Competing naked was seen as a way to honor the gods, symbolize purity, and promote the ideal of the male body. It also ensured fairness, as no athlete could hide any advantage under clothing. While it might seem shocking by modern standards, for the ancient Greeks, it was a natural and respected aspect of athletic competition, emphasizing physical perfection, strength, and the human form. This tradition, however, was not universally adopted and eventually changed as the games evolved and were revived in later centuries. The English word idiot has its origins in ancient Greek, but its original meaning was quite different from how we use it today. In ancient Greece, an idios, deltaiotitaida, referred to a private citizen, someone who did not participate in public affairs, politics, or civic life. It was not necessarily a derogatory term initially, but rather described a person who was self-centered or uninterested in the common good of the polis, city-state. Over time, as participation in public life became more valued and expected, the term gradually acquired a negative connotation, implying someone who was ignorant, uneducated, or lacking in common sense because they chose not to engage with society. This linguistic evolution highlights how cultural values can shape the meaning of words, transforming a neutral description of a private individual into a term of derision for someone perceived as foolish or socially inept. Ancient Egyptians had some rather unique methods for keeping their breath fresh, far removed from our modern toothpastes and mouthwashes. They weren't just concerned with appearances, but also with oral hygiene. To combat bad breath, a common issue in ancient times due to dietary habits and limited dental care, the Egyptians devised a type of breath mint from natural ingredients. A popular recipe involved honey for sweetness and binding, myrrh and cinnamon for aroma, along with crushed eggshells and frankincense for their abrasive and cleansing properties. Some accounts even suggest they used ground-up crocodile teeth as an abrasive component in their dental mixtures, which sounds quite gruesome, but was part of their ancient medical practices. This demonstrates their ingenuity and ability to utilize natural resources for personal health and wellness thousands of years ago. The Roman Emperor Caligula was notorious for his extravagance and erratic behavior, and one of the most striking examples is his reported intention to appoint his favorite horse, Incitatus, as a consul. While historians debate the seriousness of this act, whether it was a jest, a deliberate insult to the Senate, or a genuine sign of his mental instability, the story has endured as a testament to Caligula's caprice. Incitatus was a racehorse highly favored by Caligula, living in a marble stable with an ivory manger adorned with jewel-encrusted collars, and even attended by its own servants. Caligula was said to have declared his intention to make Incitatus a consul, the highest political office in the Roman Republic and later a significant position in the empire. This action was widely seen as a blatant affront and challenge to Roman politicians and institutions, highlighting Caligula's absolute power and disdain for traditional norms. During World War I, one of the most poignant moments of human connection amidst the conflict was the unofficial Christmas truce of 1914. On Christmas Eve, soldiers from German and Allied, primarily British and French, forces on the Western Front spontaneously ceased hostilities. It began with Christmas carols echoing across the trenches, followed by shouted Christmas greetings, and eventually, soldiers from both sides emerged into no man's land. They exchanged gifts like cigarettes, liquor, and food, and even helped each other bury their dead. Most remarkably, impromptu football, soccer, matches were organized right there on the frozen battlefields. This brief cessation of fighting only occurred in scattered locations and did not last long, being largely condemned by high command. Nevertheless, it remains a powerful and moving story, illustrating that the desire for peace and shared humanity could emerge even in the most brutal circumstances of war. In medieval Europe, sugar was an incredibly expensive luxury, accessible only to the nobility and the very wealthy. It was imported from distant lands and difficult to produce, driving its price sky high. Consequently, for the vast majority of the population, honey was the far more common and affordable sweetener. Honey was not only used to sweeten food and drinks, but also played a significant role in traditional medicine, valued for its antiseptic properties. The widespread use of honey profoundly influenced the flavors and culinary habits of the time, with many dishes and beverages sweetened with it. Sugar's scarcity and value also reflected the stark social stratification of the Middle Ages, where indulgent items like sugar became symbols of wealth and status, reinforcing the divide between the privileged few and the common folk. On the historic Apollo 11 mission that landed humans on the moon, the crew carried a very special keepsake, a small piece of wood from the famous Wright Flyer, the aircraft that made the first powered flight in history in 1903. This small wooden fragment, along with a piece of fabric from the plane's wing, was stored inside the command module. This wasn't merely a commemorative gesture, but a powerful symbol of humanity's continuous progression in aviation and space travel. It bridged the gap between the very first manned flight and the monumental achievement of landing humans on another celestial body. That tiny piece of wood carried the legacy of innovation, courage, and exploration, reminding the crew and the world of the long and challenging journey mankind had undertaken to conquer the skies and venture beyond Earth's confines. Did you know? Confucius, 551 to 479 BC, one of the most influential figures in Chinese history, is often misunderstood as the founder of a religion. However, in reality, he was a profound philosopher, educator, and political thinker. Confucius's teachings focused on ethics, morality, social order, and good governance. He emphasized the importance of run, benevolence, li, rituals and proper conduct, and righteousness. His philosophy, known as Confucianism, is not a system of worship with specific deities or religious rituals, but rather a system of thought centered on self-cultivation, family harmony, effective governance, and bringing peace to all under heaven. Confucianism became the foundational ideology for many Chinese dynasties and has profoundly influenced the culture, education, and political systems of East Asian nations, shaping their core moral and social values for millennia. There's a persistent myth that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space with the naked eye. However, this is incorrect. Astronauts and scientists have repeatedly confirmed that the Great Wall is not clearly discernible from Earth's orbit without the aid of telescopes or other special equipment. While it is an immense structure, it is relatively narrow and its color blends in with the surrounding terrain, making it incredibly difficult to distinguish from hundreds of kilometers away. In fact, many larger structures like major cities or massive hydroelectric dams are often more easily seen from space. This misconception likely stems from its status as one of the world's most impressive architectural wonders, but its size and construction simply aren't enough to overcome the limitations of human vision from such vast distances. The Black Death, also known as the Great Pestilence, was one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, sweeping through Europe in the mid-14th century, roughly 1347 to 1351. Caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, primarily spread by fleas on black rats, this plague claimed the lives of an enormous proportion of Europe's population, estimated to be between 30% and 50%, which translates to 75 to 200 million people worldwide. Its impact was profound, not just demographically, but also in fundamentally altering social, economic, political, and religious structures. The drastic reduction in the labor force led to shifts in the power and status of peasants and spurred advancements in technology and medicine. The Black Death left a deep scar on Europe's collective memory, reshaping the continent's future for centuries to come. Despite the popular image of Vikings often depicting fierce warriors wearing horned helmets, there is actually no historical or archaeological evidence to suggest that Vikings ever wore such helmets in battle. This iconic imagery appears to be a much later fabrication, particularly popularized in the 19th century. Historians and archaeologists have indeed found various types of helmets from the Viking Age, but none of them feature horns. Viking helmets were typically simple, conical or rounded, made of iron or leather, and designed for practical protection during combat. The misconception of horned helmets likely originated from romanticized depictions of Vikings in 19th century operas or paintings, intended to add a more menacing or mythical quality to them. Therefore, while pervasive, the horned Viking warrior image is entirely historically inaccurate. The Mongol Empire, founded and expanded by Genghis Khan in the 13th century, was the largest contiguous land empire in world history. At its peak, it stretched from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, encompassing a significant portion of the Eurasian continent. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol armies were renowned for their highly effective cavalry tactics, rapid movements, and ruthless efficiency in conquest. However, beyond conquest, the empire also established a sophisticated administrative system, fostered trade along the Silk Road, and created a period of Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace, that facilitated stability and the exchange of culture and technology between East and West. Though the empire eventually fractured into several khanates, its influence on global history remains immense, reshaping the political and cultural landscape of numerous regions. In feudal Japan, samurai, who were noble warriors, adhered to a strict code of conduct known as Bushido, or the Way of the Warrior. One lesser-known but crucial rule was that a samurai could be executed if they could not prove their lineage. This wasn't merely a genealogical check. It was part of a feudal social system where status and ancestry were paramount. If a samurai's origins were questioned or they couldn't prove belonging to a legitimate samurai clan, especially when traveling or captured, they could be deemed a masterless ronin or an impostor. In a society that highly valued honor and hierarchy, lacking a clear identity or being considered of unknown origin placed samurai in extreme peril, potentially leading to the most severe punishments. U.S. President Abraham Lincoln, who led the country through the tumultuous Civil War, signed the act establishing the U.S. Secret Service on April 14, 1865. Remarkably and tragically, he signed this legislation just hours before his assassination at Ford's Theater. Initially, the primary purpose of the Secret Service was not to protect the president, but to combat the rampant counterfeiting that was undermining the national economy in the aftermath of the Civil War. At the time, it was estimated that up to one-third of the currency in circulation was counterfeit. It wasn't until 1901, after the assassination of President William McKinley, that presidential protection officially became one of the Secret Service's main duties. This grim coincidence between the agency's founding and Lincoln's death has become a poignant historical anecdote. The first telephone call in history was made by the great inventor Alexander Graham Bell on March 10, 1876. This revolutionary moment ushered in a new era of communication. The historic call took place between Bell and his assistant, Thomas A. Watson, with Bell in one room and Watson in another within the same building. Bell uttered the famous words, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." And Watson heard him clearly. Although Bell had been working on the idea of transmitting speech electrically for years, this was the first time he successfully transmitted a clear and intelligible message over wires. This invention not only transformed how people communicated, but also laid the foundation for the development of modern telecommunications. The world's first traffic light was not installed to control automobile traffic as we know it today, but rather to manage the flow of horse-drawn carriages and pedestrians. It was placed in London, England, near the Houses of Parliament on December 9, 1868. This light was invented by railway engineer J.P. Knight. It was gas-powered and featured two signal arms, much like railway signals. Horizontal arms meant stop, and arms angled at 45 degrees meant caution. At night, it used red and green lights. Although a pioneering idea, the light was removed just a few weeks later after one of its gas lines leaked and exploded, injuring the operator. It would be over 40 years before electric traffic lights appeared in the United States, along with the rise of automobiles. During the height of the Cold War, the United States once considered an extremely bold and controversial plan to detonate an atomic bomb on the moon. This plan, known as Project A-119, was developed in the late 1950s by the U.S. Air Force. The purpose was not to damage the moon, but to demonstrate America's superior military and technological might to the entire world, especially the Soviet Union. The idea was that the explosion would create a mushroom cloud visible from Earth, serving as a deterrent message. However, the project was ultimately canceled due to concerns about potential consequences such as radioactive contamination of the moon, impacts on future scientific research, and negative public reaction. Nevertheless, it illustrates the level of tension and the audacious ideas conceived by superpowers during the space and nuclear arms race. Gunpowder, one of the most impactful inventions in warfare and engineering, was discovered entirely by accident by Chinese alchemists in the 9th century. These alchemists had no intention of creating an explosive substance. Their goal was to find an elixir of immortality, a potion that could grant eternal life. In their experiments with ingredients like sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter, potassium nitrate, they inadvertently created a highly flammable and explosive mixture. Initially, gunpowder was used for medicinal purposes and for creating fireworks for festivals. It was only later that the Chinese began applying it to military uses in the form of grenades, rockets, and bombs. This accidental discovery forever changed the history of warfare and paved the way for many other technological innovations. Queen Elizabeth I of England, who reigned for nearly half a century, 1558 to 1603, was renowned for her lavish fashion and meticulous public image. She possessed a colossal wardrobe of over 3,000 gowns, an astonishing number even for a monarch. Elizabeth used clothing as a tool of power and propaganda, with each gown meticulously designed to convey messages of her wealth, power, and royal status. She frequently changed outfits, wearing magnificent dresses made from the most expensive fabrics like silk, velvet, brocade, and adorned with jewels, pearls, and gold and silver thread. Her wardrobe was not just a symbol of luxury, but also a crucial part of cultivating her image as the strong and powerful Virgin Queen, maintaining admiration and loyalty from her subjects. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China in 221 BCE, dedicated decades and mobilized hundreds of thousands of people to build his colossal tomb, an underground architectural masterpiece. The primary purpose of this complex was to protect him in the afterlife. The tomb is famously known for its immense terracotta army, estimated to include over 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 150 cavalry horses, all crafted to life size and arranged in battle formation. Each terracotta soldier has unique facial features, hairstyles, and uniforms, demonstrating incredible detail. This was not merely a burial site, but a miniature model of an empire, constructed to ensure the emperor's power and protection even after death. The Battle of Hastings, which took place on October 14, 1066, was one of the most pivotal battles in English history, shaping the future of the nation. In this battle, England's King Harold Godwin's son faced the invading army of William, Duke of Normandy. The battle raged all day and concluded with King Harold's tragic death. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Harold was struck in the eye by an arrow. He was then attacked and dismembered by Norman knights. Harold's death effectively ended Anglo-Saxon rule in England and paved the way for William, who would become known as William the Conqueror, to ascend to the English throne, ushering in the Norman dynasty and profoundly influencing England's language, culture, and political system. The Boston Tea Party, which occurred on the night of December 16, 1773, was a symbolic and defiant act of protest by American colonists against British tax policies. To protest the Tea Act, which granted the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales and imposed taxes without colonial representation, a group of colonists, disguised as Mohawk Native Americans, boarded 3 British ships docked in Boston Harbor. They famously dumped 342 chests of tea, valued at approximately 10,000 pounds, equivalent to millions of dollars today, into the sea. This act was not just an isolated incident, but a powerful statement of opposition to taxation without representation, and is considered one of the most significant catalysts leading to the American Revolution. The Ottoman Empire, a powerful and long-lasting state, endured for an astonishing more than 600 years. Founded around 1299 by Osman I in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, it grew to encompass vast territories across Southeast Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. At its zenith, it controlled major trade routes and cultural centers, playing a crucial role in world history. The empire was characterized by its unique blend of Turkish, Islamic, and Byzantine traditions, establishing a sophisticated administrative system, a formidable military, and impressive artistic and architectural achievements. Despite its decline in later centuries, the Ottoman Empire's longevity and widespread influence left an indelible mark on the regions it governed, shaping their cultural, political, and social landscapes right up until its dissolution after World War I in 1922. Humans have been harnessing the power of fire for a remarkably long time, dating back approximately 1.5 million years ago during the Stone Age. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests that early hominids, such as Homo erectus, were capable of controlling fire. The mastery of fire was a transformative milestone in human evolution. It provided warmth, protection from predators, and light in the darkness, enabling early humans to expand into colder climates. Crucially, fire also made cooking possible, which improved the digestibility of food, allowing for better nutrient absorption and potentially contributing to brain development. This ability to control and use fire not only enhanced survival, but also fostered social bonding around communal hearths, laying the foundation for complex social structures and technological advancements in the millennia that followed. When Christopher Columbus first set foot in the Americas in 1492, he firmly believed he had reached the East Indies, specifically islands off the coast of Asia. Despite multiple voyages across the Atlantic, Columbus never truly grasped that he had discovered a new world, 2 entire continents previously unknown to Europeans. He insisted until his death that he had found a western route to Asia. This geographical misconception led him to repeatedly refer to the indigenous inhabitants he encountered as Indians. His voyages marked the beginning of the European colonization of the Americas, but the initial misidentification of the land highlights the limited geographical knowledge of the time and the profound implications of his accidental discovery. The modern ballpoint pen, a ubiquitous writing tool today, was patented by Hungarian journalist Laszlo Biro in 1938. Before Biro's invention, fountain pens were common, but they were often messy, prone to leaking, and required frequent refilling. Biro, frustrated by these issues, noticed that the ink used in newspaper printing dried quickly and didn't smudge. He collaborated with his brother Georgi, a chemist, to create a new type of ink that was thicker and dried faster. They then designed a pen with a tiny ball bearing at its tip, which would roll the ink onto the paper, creating a clean, consistent line. While earlier versions of ballpoint pens existed, Biro S design was the first to be widely successful and practical for everyday use, revolutionizing writing and making it more convenient for people around the globe. The iconic Statue of Liberty, a symbol of freedom and democracy, did not always have its distinctive green color. When it was unveiled in 1886, the statue had a shiny, reddish-brown hue, similar to a freshly minted penny, because it was constructed from copper. Over several decades, however, the copper underwent a natural process called patination, where it reacted with oxygen, sulfur dioxide, and moisture in the air. This chemical reaction caused a layer of copper carbonate to form on the surface, gradually transforming the statue's color to the familiar blue-green patina we see today. This protective layer not only gives the statue its unique appearance, but also safeguards the underlying copper from further corrosion, ensuring its longevity as a monumental landmark. The first washing machine was patented in 1851 by an American inventor named James King. His patent described a rotary washing machine that used a hand-powered rotary drum. While King's invention was primitive by today's standards, it marked an important step towards automating the laborious task of laundry. Before this, washing clothes was an incredibly time-consuming and physically demanding chore, often involving scrubbing clothes by hand or beating them against rocks and rivers. Early washing machines, though still requiring manual effort to operate, offered a significant improvement by utilizing mechanical action to agitate clothes and water. This invention laid the groundwork for the development of more sophisticated and eventually electric washing machines, which would dramatically reduce the household burden and revolutionize daily life in the 20th century. The very first commercial mobile phone was the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, released to the public in 1983. This pioneering device, often humorously dubbed the Brick, was a far cry from the sleek smartphones of today. It weighed a substantial 2.2 pounds, nearly 1 kilogram, and measured approximately 13 inches, 33 centimeters, long, making it inconvenient to carry around. Despite its bulky size and high price tag of nearly $4,000, equivalent to over $11,000 today, the Dynatac 8000X represented a monumental leap in communication technology. It offered just 30 minutes of talk time after a 10-hour charge and could store only 30 phone numbers. Nevertheless, it marked the beginning of the mobile phone revolution, forever changing how people connected and laying the foundation for the pervasive wireless communication we now take for granted. The popular food item, the sandwich, was named after John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, in the 18th century. Legend has it that the Earl was a devoted gambler, and, during a particularly long card game, he requested that his meat be served between 2 slices of bread. This allowed him to eat without interrupting his game or getting his cards greasy. This practical solution quickly caught on among his fellow gamblers and then spread to wider society, with people asking for the same as sandwich or simply a sandwich. While the concept of eating meat or other fillings with bread existed long before the Earl, his name became irrevocably linked to this convenient and versatile meal, which has since become a global culinary staple. The slingshot, a simple yet effective projectile weapon, was first patented in 1844 by Stephen Perry of London, England. Perry's patent focused on the use of vulcanized rubber, a material invented by Charles Goodyear just a few years earlier, which provided the elastic property necessary for a powerful and reliable slingshot. Before the widespread availability of vulcanized rubber, slingshots, or similar devices would have used less elastic materials like animal gut or spring-loaded mechanisms. Perry's patent, therefore, marked a significant improvement in the design and performance of slingshots, making them more powerful and durable. While often associated with childhood recreation, slingshots have also historically been used for hunting small game and, in some cases, as improvised weapons. The very first bicycle, invented by German Baron Karl von Drais in 1817, was a primitive device known as a dandy horse or loft machine, running machine. This early 2-wheeled contraption was notably lacking pedals. Riders propelled themselves forward by pushing their feet against the ground, much like riding a modern balance bike. The dandy horse was made mostly of wood and featured a steerable front wheel. While it offered a faster way to travel than walking, especially downhill, It was cumbersome on flat terrain and required significant physical effort. It wasn't until later innovations, such as the addition of pedals to the front wheel by Kirkpatrick Macmillan in the 1830s, though contested, and then the development of chain-driven rear wheels in the late 19th century, that the bicycle evolved into the more efficient and familiar form we recognize today. Neanderthals, an extinct species of hominids, once coexisted with Homo sapiens, modern humans, for thousands of years. Far from the brutish cavemen often depicted, Neanderthals were intelligent and adaptable. They lived across Eurasia from about 400,000 to 40,000 years ago, developing sophisticated stone tools, controlling fire, creating art, and even burying their dead, suggesting a capacity for symbolic thought. Evidence indicates that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals even interbred, as many people of non-African descent today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. The reasons for their eventual disappearance are still debated, but their coexistence with our direct ancestors highlights a complex period of human history where different hominid species shared the planet. The Library of Alexandria in ancient Egypt was one of the largest and most significant libraries of the ancient world. Established in the 3rd century BCE, it was a beacon of knowledge, housing hundreds of thousands of scrolls and attracting scholars, poets, and scientists from across the Hellenistic world. It was much more than just a collection of books. It was a leading research institution where great minds like Euclid and Eratosthenes studied and made groundbreaking discoveries. Tragically, the library suffered several periods of decline and destruction over centuries, with its vast collection eventually lost. While the exact cause and timing of its final demise are still debated by historians, its loss represents an immense intellectual tragedy, symbolizing the vulnerability of human knowledge and the fragility of cultural heritage. The ancient Inca civilization, flourishing in the rugged Andes Mountains of South America, performed successful skull surgeries, trepanation, thousands of years ago. Archaeological evidence, including skulls with neatly cut holes showing signs of bone regrowth, indicates that the Inca were remarkably skilled surgeons. They would carefully bore or cut holes into the skull, often to treat head injuries, remove bone fragments, or alleviate pressure from swelling. Given the rudimentary tools and lack of modern anesthetics or antiseptics, their success rates were astonishingly high, sometimes over 50%. This demonstrates an advanced understanding of anatomy and surgical techniques for their time, highlighting their innovative approach to medicine in a challenging environment. The Wars of the Roses were not named for flowers during the actual conflict, but rather much later, by Sir Walter Scott. These were a series of brutal civil wars fought in England primarily between two rival cadet branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster, whose emblem was a red rose, and the House of York, whose emblem was a white rose. The wars lasted intermittently from 1455 to 1487, driven by competing claims to the English throne, ambitious nobles, and a period of political instability. The conflict dramatically reshaped the English aristocracy and monarchy, ultimately ending with the victory of Henry Tudor, who established the Tudor dynasty and united the two houses through marriage, bringing a new era of stability to England. The infamous quote, "Let them eat cake," often attributed to Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France before the French Revolution, was never actually uttered by her. This phrase, which implies a shocking disregard for the suffering of the poor, became a symbol of the monarchy's detachment from its starving subjects. However, the saying predates Marie Antoinette and appeared in various forms in earlier writings. It was likely a piece of revolutionary propaganda or folklore that was later falsely attributed to her to further discredit the monarchy and fuel public resentment. While Marie Antoinette certainly lived a life of luxury, the historical record provides no evidence that she ever made such a callous remark, underscoring how popular myths can shape historical narratives. Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, who reigned for over 63 years, survived an astonishing 6 assassination attempts during her long reign. These attempts, which occurred between 1840 and 1882, ranged from pistol shots to attacks with sticks and even a cane. Miraculously, none of them resulted in serious injury to the Queen. The repeated attempts highlighted the political and social tensions of the Victorian era, as well as the personal risks faced by monarchs. Each incident typically led to a surge of public sympathy for the Queen and increased security measures. Her remarkable resilience in the face of these threats further solidified her image as a steadfast and beloved monarch, enduring challenges with grace and fortitude. At the 1936 Berlin Olympics, held under the shadow of Nazi Germany and its propaganda of Aryan supremacy, African-American athlete Jesse Owens achieved an extraordinary feat by winning 4 gold medals. Owens' victories in the 100-meter dash, 200-meter dash, long jump, and 4x100-meter relay directly contradicted Adolf Hitler's ideology of racial superiority, which was a central theme of the Nazi regime's carefully orchestrated games. His dominant performance on the world stage, especially in front of Hitler himself, was a powerful rebuke to racism and a triumph for athletic excellence over political ideology. Owens' achievements not only shattered Nazi myths, but also became a symbol of courage and resistance against discrimination, leaving an enduring legacy in sports and civil rights history. The wristwatch was initially created for women in the 19th century, while men largely continued to use pocket watches. Early wristwatches were often ornate, considered more of a fashionable piece of jewelry than a practical timekeeping device. Queen Elizabeth I of England reportedly received a wristwatch, though more like a small timepiece attached to the arm, as a gift in the late 16th century. However, it was Patek Philippe who created the first modern wristwatch for Countess Koszkiewicz of Hungary in 1868. Men, valuing practicality and traditional masculine fashion, largely stuck with pocket watches until World War I. During the war, officers found wristwatches far more practical for coordinating attacks, as they allowed for quick time checks without fumbling for a pocket watch, leading to their widespread adoption by men thereafter. The very first automobile to be granted a patent was designed by Carl Benz in Germany in 1886. His invention, the Benz patent motor wagon, is widely regarded as the first true automobile, a vehicle designed to be propelled by an internal combustion engine rather than being a modified carriage. This three-wheeled vehicle was powered by a single-cylinder, 4-stroke engine and was capable of reaching speeds of about 10 miles per hour, 16 kilometers per hour. While it looked quite different from modern cars, the patent motor wagon marked the birth of the automotive industry. Benz's wife, Bertha Benz, later undertook the first long-distance automobile journey in 1888, proving the practicality of the invention and paving the way for the global car industry that would revolutionize transportation. The United States national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, began its life as a poem written by Francis Scott Key in 1814. Key, a lawyer and amateur poet, was inspired to write the lyrics after witnessing the bombardment of Fort McHenry in Baltimore during the War of 1812. He was on a British ship, negotiating a prisoner exchange, and watched the overnight shelling. At dawn, seeing the American flag still flying over the fort, he was moved to write Defense of Fort McHenry. The poem was soon set to the tune of a popular British drinking song, To Anacreon in Heaven, and quickly gained popularity. However, it was not until 1931 that the Star-Spangled Banner was officially designated as the national anthem of the United States by an act of Congress, cementing its place in American patriotic tradition. The Internet, which has revolutionized global communication and information access, was initially developed by the United States Department of Defense. Its origins trace back to the late 1960s with ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, a project funded by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The primary goal was to create a decentralized computer network that could withstand a nuclear attack and ensure continuous communication for military and research purposes. This network allowed scientists and researchers at different universities and institutions to share data and computing resources. Over decades, ARPANET evolved, incorporating new protocols like TCP/IP, and gradually expanded beyond military and academic uses, eventually becoming the global public network we know as the Internet today. Its military origins highlight how critical defense initiatives can inadvertently lay the groundwork for transformative civilian technologies. King Henry VIII of England, reigned 1509 to 1547, is famously known for having 6 wives, and his tumultuous marital life significantly shaped English history and the Church of England. Driven by his desire for a male heir and his infatuation with Anne Boleyn, Henry controversially broke away from the Roman Catholic Church to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. His 6 marriages were as follows: Catherine of Aragon, divorced; Anne Boleyn, executed; Jane Seymour, died; Anne of Cleves, annulled; Catherine Howard, executed; and Catherine Parr, survived him. The executions of Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard on charges of treason and adultery underscore the brutal political realities of the Tudor court and Henry's absolute power, forever etching his name into the annals of dramatic royal history. The ancient Celts, a diverse group of tribal societies that flourished across Europe from the Iron Age to the Roman era, held fascinating beliefs, including a strong conviction in reincarnation. They believed that the soul was immortal and, upon death, would pass into another body, either human or animal. This belief system significantly influenced their approach to warfare. Some accounts from Roman chroniclers suggest that certain Celtic warriors would fight naked or nearly naked into battle. This daring practice was likely driven by several factors: a display of bravery, a disregard for personal safety due to their belief in the afterlife, and possibly to intimidate their enemies. While the extent of this practice is debated, it speaks to the unique cultural and spiritual dimensions of Celtic warfare, contrasting sharply with the armored legions of Rome. The very first military submarine to be used in combat was an American invention called the Turtle, deployed during the American Revolutionary War in 1776. Designed by David Bushnell, a Yale student, the Turtle was a hand-powered, egg-shaped vessel intended to attach explosives to the undersides of British warships. Its mission was to sink HMS Eagle, the flagship of the British fleet, in New York Harbor. On September 7, 1776, Sergeant Ezra Lee attempted the attack. Despite his bravery, he failed to attach the explosive to the ship's copper-plated hull. Though the attack was unsuccessful, the Turtle represented a groundbreaking leap in naval warfare technology, demonstrating the potential of underwater warfare and laying the conceptual groundwork for future submarine development. While Cleopatra, the last active pharaoh of ancient Egypt, is often associated with the grandeur of Egyptian culture, she was not ethnically Egyptian. She was, in fact, of Greek Macedonian descent, belonging to the Ptolemaic dynasty. This dynasty was founded by Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals, who established himself as ruler of Egypt after Alexander's death. For nearly 3 centuries, the Ptolemaic rulers maintained their Greek identity, speaking Greek and largely adhering to Hellenistic customs, though they did adopt some Egyptian traditions to legitimize their rule. Cleopatra was one of the few Ptolemaic rulers who bothered to learn the Egyptian language. Her Greek heritage underscores the complex cultural tapestry of ancient Egypt during the Hellenistic period and challenges the common perception of her as ethnically Egyptian. The electric chair, a method of capital punishment primarily used in the United States, was surprisingly invented by a dentist. Alfred P. Southwick, an American dentist and inventor, first proposed the idea in the late 1880s as a more humane alternative to hanging, after witnessing an accidental electrocution. He believed that a quick, electrically induced death would be less barbaric. Southwick partnered with Thomas Edison's company to develop the device, as Edison was keen to promote AC, alternating current, power over Westinghouse's DC, direct current, by associating AC with the brutal act of execution. The first execution by electric chair took place in 1890 in New York, and while intended to be humane, it quickly became a controversial symbol of capital punishment. The modern cracker was originally invented with a very specific, practical purpose in mind: to serve as a long-lasting, easily transportable bread for naval use. In 1801, Josiah Bent of Milton, Massachusetts, began baking water biscuits, or biscuits of bread, made from flour and water, baked until hard. These crackers were extremely dry and dense, making them resistant to spoilage during long sea voyages, where fresh provisions were scarce. They provided a crucial source of carbohydrates for sailors, even if they were notoriously difficult to eat without softening them first. This invention provided a vital, non-perishable food staple for navies around the world, making arduous journeys at sea more sustainable and contributing to global exploration and trade. During the last ice age, which peaked around 20,000 years ago, global sea levels were significantly lower than they are today. This was because vast quantities of water were locked up in massive ice sheets and glaciers covering large parts of the continents. As a result of these lower sea levels, the British Isles were connected to mainland Europe by a land bridge known as Doggerland. This extensive landmass stretched across what is now the North Sea, linking Britain to modern-day Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. This allowed early humans and animals to migrate freely between Britain and continental Europe. As the climate warmed and glaciers melted around 8,000 to 6,500 BCE, Doggerland was gradually submerged, separating Britain and creating the English Channel and the North Sea. Paper, one of the most transformative inventions in human history, was first invented in China during the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE. While earlier forms of writing surfaces like bamboo strips, silk, and papyrus existed, they were either heavy, expensive, or fragile. The traditional account credits Cai Lun, a Han court eunuch, with standardizing and improving the paper-making process around 105 CE. He experimented with various materials, including tree bark, hemp waste, old rags, and fishing nets, grinding them into a pulp, pressing out the water, and drying the thin sheets. This new material was much more affordable, lightweight, and versatile than previous writing surfaces, facilitating the spread of literacy, bureaucracy, and artistic expression, and revolutionizing information dissemination across the empire and eventually the world. While Ferdinand Magellan is widely credited as the first person to lead a circumnavigation of the Earth, he himself did not complete the entire journey. Magellan, a Portuguese explorer leading a Spanish expedition, set sail in 1519 with 5 ships and about 270 men, aiming to find a western sea route to the Spice Islands. He successfully navigated through the strait that now bears his name, the Strait of Magellan, and crossed the Pacific Ocean. However, he was tragically killed in a battle with indigenous warriors in the Philippines in April 1521. Only one of his ships, the Victoria, commanded by Juan Sebastián Elcano, completed the circumnavigation, arriving back in Spain in 1522 with just 18 surviving crew members. Thus, while Magellan initiated the first circumnavigation, it was Elcano who brought the voyage to its incredible completion. The ancient Persian Empire, also known as the Achaemenid Empire, was the largest empire the world had ever seen up to its time. At its peak around 500 BCE, it stretched from Egypt in the west to parts of India in the east, encompassing a vast and diverse array of peoples, cultures, and lands. Founded by Cyrus the Great, the Persian Empire was renowned for its efficient administration, including a sophisticated postal system, extensive road networks, like the Royal Road, and a policy of tolerance towards conquered peoples' religions and customs. This massive empire ruled over an estimated 44% of the world's population at the time, a proportion that no empire has since surpassed. Its sheer scale and advanced governance made it a dominant force for over 2 centuries until its conquest by Alexander the Great. Despite his legendary status as one of history's greatest artists and thinkers, Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519, is believed to have completed only around 15 paintings in his entire lifetime. This surprisingly small number is due to several factors. Leonardo was a polymath with an insatiable curiosity, constantly distracted by his diverse interests in science, engineering, anatomy, botany, and more. He often left projects unfinished, either due to new fascinations, his perfectionism, or difficulties with commissions. His meticulous process, experimental techniques, and slow pace also contributed to the limited output. While his completed works like the Mona Lisa and The Last Supper are iconic masterpieces, his notebooks reveal countless drawings, studies, and unexecuted ideas, illustrating a mind brimming with creativity that often prioritized discovery over finished artistic products. The average human life expectancy dramatically increased during the 20th century. At the beginning of the 1900s, the global average life expectancy was only about 31 years. By the end of the century, it had more than doubled, reaching around 67 years. This incredible leap was primarily driven by monumental advancements in medicine and public health. Key factors included the development of vaccines for diseases like polio and measles, the discovery of antibiotics to combat bacterial infections, improved sanitation systems, clean water and waste disposal, better understanding of nutrition, and significant reductions in infant mortality rates. These collective improvements transformed human health and longevity, allowing a much larger portion of the population to live into old age, a stark contrast to previous millennia where early death was common. The most famous flying ace of World War I, Manfred von Richthofen, better known as the Red Baron, was credited with shooting down an astonishing 80 enemy aircraft. A German fighter pilot, he gained his legendary status through his distinctive red Fokker Dr. I triplane and his remarkable aerial combat skills. He initially served as a reconnaissance pilot before becoming a fighter pilot, quickly distinguishing himself. His meticulous record-keeping and strategic prowess made him virtually unstoppable for a period. The Red Baron became a symbol of aerial supremacy and chivalry in warfare, even among his enemies. His incredible tally of victories made him one of the most feared and celebrated figures of the Great War until he was killed in action in April 1918. While Queen Cleopatra is the most famous figure of ancient Egypt, she was not ethnically Egyptian in the traditional sense. She was the last active pharaoh of Egypt, but she was of Greek Macedonian descent, a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty. This dynasty was founded by Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals, who took control of Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 BC. For nearly 300 years, the Ptolemaic rulers maintained their Greek identity, speaking Greek and adhering to Hellenistic customs. Cleopatra was unique among them for learning the Egyptian language and embracing some Egyptian traditions to solidify her rule. Her Greek lineage highlights the complex blend of cultures in Egypt during the Hellenistic period and her strategic use of both Greek and Egyptian identities to maintain power. The ancient Romans had a peculiar and somewhat unhygienic practice. They used urine for laundry, particularly to clean and whiten clothes. This seemingly bizarre method was effective because urine, especially stale urine, contains ammonia. Ammonia is a powerful cleaning agent and bleaching agent, acting as a natural detergent that helps break down dirt and grease in fabrics. Roman fullers, laundry workers, would collect urine from public urinals, let it ferment to increase its ammonia content, and then use it to stomp on clothes. While the thought might be off-putting today, it was a practical and effective solution for their time, demonstrating an early understanding of chemistry for everyday tasks, long before modern detergents were invented. The very first coloring book was not an entertainment item for children, but rather a tool for education. It was published in 1880 by the McLaughlin brothers, titled The Little Folks' Paint Book. These early paint books and coloring books were designed to teach children about art and nature, providing outlines for them to fill in with watercolors or crayons. The concept quickly gained popularity, evolving into the diverse range of coloring books we see today, aimed at both children and adults. What began as a simple educational aid for artistic development transformed into a universal pastime, offering relaxation, creativity, and a nostalgic escape. The sport of basketball was invented in 1891 by James Naismith, a Canadian physical education instructor at the International YMCA Training School in Springfield, Massachusetts. Naismith was tasked with creating a new indoor sport that was less rough than football and offered a fairer playing field for all athletes. He developed a game with 13 basic rules, using peach baskets as hoops and a soccer ball. The first game was played with 9 players on each side. His goal was to create a game of skill rather than brute force, emphasizing passing and shooting. From these humble beginnings, basketball quickly spread across the United States and then internationally, growing into one of the world's most popular sports with billions of fans. The first general-purpose digital electronic computer, known as ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, was an enormous machine. Built between 1943 and 1945 at the University of Pennsylvania, it was designed for the U.S. Army to calculate artillery firing tables during World War II. ENIAC was truly colossal. It weighed over 27 tons, more than 60,000 pounds, occupied a large room of about 1,800 square feet, 167 square meters, and consumed 150 kilowatts of power. It contained over 17,468 vacuum tubes, 7,200 crystal diodes, 1,500 relays, 70,000 resistors, and 10,000 capacitors. While incredibly powerful for its time, its immense size and energy consumption highlight the rapid miniaturization and efficiency gains in computing technology over the decades. The 1920s in the United States are often referred to as the Jazz Age, a period of significant cultural and social explosion. Following World War I, the nation experienced an economic boom and a profound shift in societal norms. Jazz music, originating from African American communities in New Orleans, quickly gained widespread popularity, symbolizing the era's energy, rebellion, and modernity. Flappers with their short skirts and bobbed hair challenged traditional roles for women, while speakeasies flourished during Prohibition. This decade was also marked by rapid technological advancements, radio, automobiles, new artistic movements, and a sense of liberation and prosperity, creating a vibrant and dynamic period that left an indelible mark on American culture and identity. The world's first photograph wasn't a sharp portrait or a vibrant landscape. It was captured around 1826 or 1827 by the French inventor Nicephore Niepce. Titled View from the Window at Le Gras, the image was taken from his attic window at his estate in Burgundy. He used a technique called heliography, sun drawing, an etching process on a pewter plate coated with bitumen of Judea. The exposure process lasted for several days, resulting in a hazy, barely discernible image. Nevertheless, this marked the beginning of photography, paving the way for the development of camera technology and the ability to record the world visually. The complex and ancient game of chess is believed to have originated in India. The game was initially called Chaturanga for divisions and emerged around the 6th century CE. Chaturanga simulated a military battle and could be played using 4 branches of the army: infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots, reflecting the main components of the Indian army at the time. From India, the game spread throughout Persia, where it was known as Chaturang, and then to the Arab world, where it became Shatranj. Eventually, it made its way to Europe and evolved into modern chess, with the familiar rules and pieces we know today. The world's first printed newspaper was published in Germany in 1605. This newspaper, titled Relation aller Firmen und Gedenkordegen Historien, collection of all distinguished and memorable stories, was published by Johann Carolus in Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. Before this, information was often disseminated orally through handwritten newsletters or pamphlets. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the 15th century laid the groundwork for the advent of printed journalism. Carolus's newspaper, though rudimentary by modern standards, marked the beginning of a new mass medium, allowing information to be spread more widely and regularly, thereby shaping how people accessed news and understood the world around them. The humble Band-Aid, an essential medical item in every household today, was invented in 1920 by Earl Dixon, a Johnson & Johnson employee. Dixon came up with the idea because his wife, Josephine, frequently suffered minor cuts and burns while cooking and needed an easy way to dress her own wounds. He created pre-made bandages by placing a small piece of gauze on a strip of adhesive tape and covering it with a thin piece of crinoline to keep it sterile. Initially, these bandages were very large and had to be cut to size. Dixon's invention transformed wound care from a complex task into a simple and convenient one, providing significant utility to millions of households worldwide. The widespread use of iron marked the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. The Bronze Age, where humans primarily used alloys of copper and tin for tools and weapons, spanned millennia. However, from around 1200 BCE to 600 BCE, with specific timings varying by region, people began to discover and utilize iron. Iron was far more abundant than bronze, and although it was harder to work with, when properly forged, it produced stronger and more durable tools and weapons. The transition to iron brought significant advancements in agriculture, better plows, military technology, and the production of goods, fostering the growth of new societies and empires across the globe. The Channel Tunnel, often called the Eurotunnel or Channel, connects England and France beneath the Strait of Dover. Although the idea for a tunnel connecting the two nations had been proposed as early as the 19th century, it wasn't until 1994 that this massive engineering feat was officially completed and opened for service. Measuring approximately 50.45 kilometers, 31.35 miles, long, with 37.9 kilometers, 23.5 miles, of that length underwater, the Eurotunnel is one of the modern engineering marvels. It consists of 3 parallel tunnels, 2 railway tunnels, and a smaller service tunnel. Its completion significantly reduced travel time between London and Paris, enhancing economic and cultural connectivity between the UK and mainland Europe. The fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989, was a momentous and symbolic event that marked the end of the Cold War and the reunification of Germany. The wall had been erected in 1961 by the East German authorities to prevent East Berliners and East Germans from fleeing to free West Berlin. It became a stark symbol of Cold War division and oppression. The wall's collapse happened unexpectedly, after an East German official mistakenly announced that citizens were free to cross the border immediately. Thousands of East and West Berliners flocked to the wall, tearing it down together in an emotional celebration, signifying profound political change across Europe. The first modern bank was established in Italy in 1406. This was the Banco di San Giorgio, Bank of St. George, in Genoa. While forms of lending and credit had existed since ancient times, Banco di San Giorgio is considered one of the earliest public banks with a more complex organizational structure, operating as an independent institution with its own board of governors, responsible for managing public debt and performing financial transactions for the state and merchants. The establishment of this bank marked a significant step in financial systems, from which concepts of lending, deposits, currency exchange, and financial management gradually developed and spread throughout Europe, laying the groundwork for today's global banking system. The Opium Wars, fought between Britain and China in the mid-19th century, were major military conflicts primarily centered on the opium trade. Beginning in the late 1830s, these wars erupted when China's Qing government attempted to halt the illegal importation of opium from Britain, traded by the British East India Company, which had caused a public health crisis and severely weakened China's economy. Britain, with its superior military, particularly its navy, won both wars. The First Opium War 1839 to 1842 and the Second Opium War 1856 to 1860. As a result, China was forced to open up its trade ports, cede Hong Kong to Britain, and accept unfavorable trade terms, marking an era of century of humiliation for China and the expansion of Western imperialism in Asia. The Sumerians, who lived in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, from approximately 4,500 BCE, are often considered the world's first civilization. They were pioneers in many crucial fields, laying the foundation for human development. The Sumerians invented writing, cuneiform script, allowing them to record history, laws, and transactions. They are also credited with the first use of the wheel for transportation, and they developed complex legal systems, with the Code of Uarnemu being one of the earliest known law codes. Additionally, they developed irrigation systems, city-states, and advanced mathematical and astronomical concepts. The Sumerians' contributions paved the way for subsequent civilizations and shaped many aspects of the modern world. The world's first atomic bomb was tested on July 16, 1945, in a top-secret event codenamed Trinity in the New Mexico desert. This test was the culmination of the Manhattan Project, a highly classified U.S. effort during World War II to develop nuclear weapons before Nazi Germany. Led by physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer and involving thousands of scientists and engineers, the project succeeded in harnessing atomic energy. The Trinity explosion had the force of 21 kilotons of TNT, creating a massive fireball and sending a shockwave across the desert. This event not only changed the course of the war, but also ushered in the atomic age, forever reshaping global geopolitics and subsequent arms races. The tomb of King Tutankhamun, the young pharaoh of ancient Egypt, was discovered almost entirely intact in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. Most other pharaonic tombs had been plundered thousands of years prior, but Tutankhamun's burial site, despite a few ancient intrusions, still contained an unparalleled trove of treasures and artifacts. The discovery of this tomb, located in the Valley of the Kings, created a global sensation and reignited widespread interest in Egyptology. The artifacts found, including his solid gold burial mask, jewelry, and furniture, provided invaluable insights into ancient Egyptian life, beliefs, and artistry, making Tutankhamun one of history's most famous pharaohs. The gas mask, a vital life-saving device, was invented by African-American inventor Garrett Morgan in 1914. Morgan, the son of former slaves, was a self-taught inventor with numerous patents. He developed his safety hood and smoke protector after witnessing a severe fire incident. His device featured a hood that enveloped the head with two air tubes that extended to the ground to filter smoke and noxious fumes, allowing the wearer to breathe in dangerous environments. Morgan's invention was patented and quickly adopted by fire departments, police forces, and mine rescue teams across the United States, saving countless lives in fires and disaster situations. The Byzantine Empire was, in fact, the direct continuation of the Roman Empire in the East. While the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 CE, the Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, formerly Byzantium, now Istanbul, continued to thrive for over 1,000 more years. Its inhabitants considered themselves Romans, and the official language was Latin before transitioning to Greek. The Byzantine Empire preserved and transmitted much of ancient Greek and Roman heritage, including law, philosophy, art, and architecture, while also serving as a crucial bulwark protecting Europe from invasions from the East. Its remarkable longevity and profound cultural influence left an indelible mark on world history. Napoleon Bonaparte, the formidable French general and emperor, was definitively defeated at the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. This battle, fought near Waterloo, Belgium, then part of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, was Napoleon's final military engagement. He faced a coalition army led by the Duke of Wellington from Britain and Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher from Prussia. Although Napoleon displayed tactical brilliance, the timely arrival of the Prussian forces turned the tide of the battle. This defeat irrevocably ended Napoleon's power and led to his exile to the remote island of St. Helena, concluding a tumultuous era in European history. The fork, a common eating utensil today, was initially considered an unnecessary and even scandalous item in Europe. For centuries, Europeans primarily ate with their hands, knives, or spoons. When the fork began to be introduced from the Byzantine Empire, where it was more widely used, it faced considerable resistance. Christian clergy viewed the fork as a useless luxury and even a tool of the devil because it allowed people to eat without touching their food, which was seen as an arrogant act against God's gift. It took many centuries, with the influence of Italian and French culture, for the fork to gradually gain acceptance and eventually become an indispensable part of cutlery across Europe and the Western world. The legend of King Arthur, the heroic British king who gathered the Knights of the Round Table to defend his kingdom against Anglo-Saxon invaders, is one of the most famous tales in English history and literature. However, historians still debate whether King Arthur was a real historical figure or purely a mythical character born from folklore and literary tradition. While there's no definitive archaeological or contemporary historical evidence confirming his existence, many believe the Arthurian legends may be based on a real British warrior leader who lived around the late 5th or early 6th century. Regardless of his true origin, the stories of King Arthur and his knights have profoundly shaped English culture and national identity for centuries. The Industrial Revolution, one of the most profoundly transformative periods in human history, began in Great Britain during the 18th century. This era witnessed a massive shift from agrarian and handicraft economies to industrial and machine-based ones. Key inventions like James Watt's steam engine, the power loom, and the spinning jenny revolutionized textile production and coal mining, leading to the explosive growth of factories and urban centers. The Industrial Revolution brought about sweeping social, economic, and technological changes, including the rise of the working class, the development of the factory system, and a fundamental alteration in how people lived, worked, and interacted with their environment, laying the groundwork for the modern industrial world. The first recorded surgery in history was performed by an ancient Egyptian physician around 2750 BCE. Evidence for this comes from an ancient medical papyrus known as the Edwin Smith Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text detailing surgical procedures and treatments for injuries. This papyrus describes in detail cases of trauma, fractures, dislocations, and even cranial surgeries. It shows that the ancient Egyptians had a surprisingly advanced knowledge of anatomy and the ability to perform complex surgical procedures. While their medical practices and instruments were crude by modern standards, these records demonstrate their pioneering efforts in the fields of medicine and surgery. The Mongols, particularly during the time of Genghis Khan, were nomadic people living on vast steppes, and their lifestyle reflected a deep connection with horses. One fascinating fact about them is that Mongol warriors often slept on horseback. This wasn't just an anecdote, but an integral part of their tactics and way of life. They could travel continuously for days, eating, and even napping while still mounted. This ability, combined with their exceptional horsemanship and archery skills, made the Mongol army a formidable force, capable of rapid and unexpected movements over long distances, exhausting their opponents and conquering a vast empire. The first successful flight by the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, at Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, on December 17, 1903, lasted a mere 12 seconds. Orville Wright piloted the Flyer aircraft in that historic flight, covering a distance of approximately 36.5 meters, 120 feet, at an airspeed of 6.8 miles per hour, 10.9 kilometers per hour. Although brief, it was the first sustained, controlled, powered flight of a heavier-than-air aircraft. It marked the dawn of the aviation age, opening the door for aerial exploration and eventually space travel. From those short 12 seconds, the aviation industry has grown exponentially, turning humanity's dream of flight into a reality. The world's first national park was established in Yellowstone in the United States on March 1, 1872. President Ulysses S. Grant signed the act establishing Yellowstone, declaring it a public park or pleasuring ground for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. This decision created a new model for nature conservation, where areas of natural beauty and unique ecosystems were protected from development and exploitation. Yellowstone is famous for its geysers, like Old Faithful, hot springs, Grand Canyons, and its diverse wildlife. The establishment of Yellowstone inspired many other countries worldwide to create their own national parks, laying the foundation for the global conservation movement. The earliest known maps were drawn by the Babylonians. While they weren't maps of the world in the modern sense, they were the earliest known geographical representations of specific areas. One of the most famous Babylonian maps is the Babylonian Map of the World, dating back to approximately the 6th century BCE. It was inscribed on a clay tablet, depicting the world as a circular disk with the city of Babylon at its center, surrounded by an ocean and mythical lands. These maps primarily served religious purposes, land management, or recorded military campaigns. They show that even in ancient times, humans had the need to visualize and record their surroundings, laying the groundwork for cartography. The city of Jericho in Palestine is considered the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, with archaeological evidence suggesting human settlement at the site for at least 11,000 years. Located in the Jordan Valley, Jericho has seen numerous periods of construction and reconstruction, with layers of ancient settlements piled on top of each other. Archaeologists have uncovered pre-pottery Neolithic defensive walls dating back to around 8000 BCE, indicating an organized community. Jericho's strategic location near a spring and fertile land made it an ideal site for agricultural communities to thrive and persist through millennia, demonstrating humanity's remarkable resilience and adaptability. The Normandy landings, famously known as D-Day, took place on June 6, 1944, and constituted the largest amphibious invasion in military history. This was a pivotal Allied operation in World War II aimed at liberating Western Europe from Nazi German control. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other Allied nations stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, supported by a massive naval and air force. This incredibly risky landing successfully established a foothold in Europe, opening the Western Front and ultimately leading to the defeat of Nazi Germany. D-Day stands as a testament to immense international cooperation and extraordinary sacrifice in the fight against tyranny. The first modern Olympic Games were held in Athens, Greece, in 1896. After the ancient games were banned in 393 CE, the idea of a major international sporting event was revived largely due to the efforts of French educator Pierre de Coubertin. He believed that sport could promote understanding and peace among nations. The 1896 Athens Games attracted 241 male athletes from 14 nations, competing in 9 sports. Although much smaller in scale than today's Olympics, the event was a great success and is considered the beginning of the modern Olympic movement, which now occurs every 4 years, becoming the largest and most widely watched sporting event in the world. The Vietnam War was the longest military conflict in U.S. history. While the precise starting date of direct U.S. military involvement is debated, American military personnel were engaged from as early as 1955 in an advisory role and continued until the complete withdrawal of troops in 1975, spanning nearly 20 years. It was a complex and costly conflict, causing deep divisions within American society and having profound effects on the nation's foreign policy. The war's protracted duration, involving multiple generations of soldiers and billions of dollars in expenditure, made it one of the most difficult and memorable chapters in U.S. military history. The first domestic refrigerator was invented in 1913 by American engineer Fred W. Wolf. He developed a refrigeration unit that sat on top of a conventional icebox. However, the first self-contained, fully automatic refrigerator, with the cooling unit integrated into the cabinet, was introduced by General Electric in 1927 under the name Monitor Top. Before this, food preservation relied heavily on iceboxes, which required frequent purchases and replacement of ice. The advent of the electric refrigerator revolutionized household food storage, reducing waste and allowing people to keep fresh food longer, contributing to improved hygiene and nutrition and significantly changing family cooking and shopping habits. X-rays, an indispensable tool for medical diagnosis and scientific research, were discovered entirely by accident by German physicist Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen in 1895. While experimenting with cathode rays in a vacuum discharge tube, Röntgen noticed that certain materials glowed even when they were out of the cathode ray's direct path. He realized that a new, invisible type of ray was being produced, capable of penetrating solid objects. Because he didn't know their nature, he called them X-rays. This groundbreaking discovery earned him the first Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901 and was quickly applied in medicine to see inside the human body without surgery, opening a new era in diagnosis and treatment. The colossal Moai statues on Easter Island, Rapa Nui, one of the world's great archaeological mysteries, were carved by the indigenous Rapa Nui people. These monolithic statues, made from soft volcanic rock, were created between approximately 1250 and 1500 CE. They are believed to represent deified ancestors and played a significant role in the Rapa Nui's religious ceremonies, guarding villages and symbolizing the power and status of chiefs. The transportation and erection of these enormous statues, some weighing up to 75 tons, presented an immense engineering challenge and serve as a testament to the ingenuity and organizational prowess of the ancient Rapa Nui civilization. The famous phrase, "the show must go on," has surprisingly dark and literal origins in the world of circus performances. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when circuses were at their peak, performers often worked under extremely dangerous conditions. Accidents, injuries, and even deaths were not uncommon during acts involving high wires, wild animals, or complex acrobatics. Despite such unfortunate events, the common practice was to continue the performance immediately, often after removing the injured or deceased performer. This grim determination to maintain the illusion of seamless entertainment, regardless of personal cost, gave birth to the enduring adage. It underscored the fierce dedication, the demanding nature of the entertainment industry, and the expectation that the audience's experience would never be disrupted, no matter the tragedy unfolding behind the scenes. During the reign of King James I of England, early 17th century, there was a widespread belief that the tomato was poisonous. Originating from the Americas, tomatoes were introduced to Europe in the 16th century. While some Mediterranean cultures quickly adopted them, in Northern Europe, particularly in Britain, they were often viewed with suspicion. This fear stemmed partly from the fact that tomatoes belong to the nightshade family, which includes several genuinely poisonous plants. Additionally, the acidic juice of tomatoes reacted with the pewter plates commonly used by the wealthy, leaching lead from the plates and causing lead poisoning, which was then mistakenly attributed to the fruit itself. As a result, for nearly 2 centuries, tomatoes were largely cultivated as ornamental plants rather than for consumption in many parts of Europe, only gaining widespread acceptance as a food in the 19th century. The iconic symbol of the barber pole, with its distinctive red, white, and blue stripes, originates from a time when barbers performed more than just haircuts. In medieval Europe, barbers were also involved in medical practices, including bloodletting, tooth extractions, and minor surgeries. The red stripe symbolized blood, the white stripe represented bandages, and the blue, or sometimes black, stripe represented veins. The pole itself was an object patients would grasp during bloodletting procedures to encourage blood flow. After the procedure, the blood-soaked bandages would be hung on the pole to dry, twisting around it and creating the striped pattern. Although the medical duties of barbers eventually ceased, the striped pole remained as a historical testament to their dual role as hair carvers and healers. In ancient Rome, purple dye was extremely valuable and associated exclusively with the imperial family and the highest echelons of society. This exclusivity stemmed from the immense difficulty and cost of producing it. The most prized purple dye, known as Tyrian purple, was extracted from the mucus of thousands of tiny murex snails, native to the Mediterranean coast. Producing just a few grams of dye required crushing tens of thousands of snails, making it astronomically expensive, more valuable than gold by weight. The color was incredibly vibrant and resistant to fading, signifying immense wealth and power. Sumptuary laws strictly regulated who could wear purple, reinforcing its status as a symbol of authority. This scarcity meant that only emperors, consuls, and later, some high-ranking religious figures could afford to wear it, making it a true mark of distinction in Roman society. The first recorded use of biological warfare dates back to the 14th century, during the siege of Kaffa, modern-day Feodosia, Ukraine, in 1346. The Mongol Golden Horde, under the command of Janibeg, was besieging the Genoese trading port. When the Mongol army was decimated by the Black Death, Janibeg reportedly ordered the corpses of plague victims to be catapulted over the city walls. The intention was to infect the defenders, forcing them to surrender. While the effectiveness of this particular incident in spreading the plague is debated by historians, as the disease could have entered the city through other means, it remains one of the earliest and most dramatic accounts of using disease as a weapon, highlighting humanity's long and grim history of employing devastating tactics in warfare. Before the widespread adoption of modern alarm clocks, people in industrializing cities often relied on knocker-uppers to wake them up for work. This unique profession thrived in Britain and Ireland during the 19th and early 20th centuries. A knocker-upper's job was to go around a neighborhood at prearranged times, using various tools to rouse clients from their sleep. This could involve tapping on windows with a long stick, throwing pebbles at bedroom windows, or even using a pea shooter to fire dried peas at windows. Clients would pay a small fee for this service. This profession became obsolete with the advent of affordable and reliable alarm clocks, but it offers a charming glimpse into the ingenious, low-tech solutions people devised to manage their daily lives before widespread electrification and automation. The famous phrase, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, was reportedly uttered by Julius Caesar in 47 BCE, but it wasn't to describe a long, strategic campaign. Instead, it was a concise and triumphant message sent to the Roman Senate after his incredibly swift and decisive victory at the Battle of Zela. This battle, fought in modern-day Turkey, saw Caesar's legions defeat Pharnaces II of Pontus in just 5 days after arriving. The brevity of the battle and the absolute nature of his victory allowed Caesar to summarize his triumph with unparalleled swagger and confidence. This pithy declaration not only served as a powerful testament to his military genius, but also became one of the most enduring and memorable quotes in history, symbolizing quick and complete success. During World War II, many countries implemented rationing to ensure a fair distribution of scarce resources and support the war effort. In Britain, rationing was particularly strict and long-lasting, covering a wide range of goods. What's often less known is that food rationing in Britain continued for nearly a decade after the war ended, only being fully abolished in 1954. This prolonged rationing was due to the immense economic strain of rebuilding the country, widespread devastation, and the need to repay war debts. Items like sugar, meat, tea, butter, and even sweets remained subject to ration books for years, profoundly impacting daily life and shaping the diet and consumer habits of generations of Britons long after the fighting had ceased. The ancient Greeks had a unique and surprisingly democratic way of exiling unpopular or potentially tyrannical citizens through a process called ostracism. Each year, Athenian citizens would vote by writing the name of a person they wished to exile on a piece of pottery called an ostracon. If a person received a sufficient number of votes, typically 6,000, they would be exiled from Athens for 10 years, without losing their property or civil rights upon return. The purpose was not to punish for a crime, but to prevent any single individual from gaining too much power and threatening the democracy. This system allowed the Athenian polis to remove perceived threats to its stability peacefully, showcasing an early and innovative approach to managing political dissent and maintaining civic balance. The first recorded use of toilet paper dates back to 6th century China. While earlier cultures used various materials like leaves, moss, cloth, or water for personal hygiene, the Chinese are credited with inventing and mass-producing paper specifically for this purpose. By the 14th century, it was reported that vast quantities of toilet paper were produced annually in China, including perfumed sheets for the imperial family. In contrast, in the Western world, the use of commercial toilet paper only became widespread in the late 19th century. This highlights China's advanced paper-making technology and its practical application long before similar innovations took hold in Europe or other parts of the world, making it a pioneer in personal hygiene products. The famous pyramids of Giza in ancient Egypt were not built by slaves, as is often depicted in popular culture and some historical accounts. Archaeological evidence and recent discoveries suggest that they were constructed by a highly organized and skilled workforce of paid laborers. These workers, including farmers, artisans, and stonecutters, lived in purpose-built villages near the construction sites, complete with bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities. They were likely paid in food rations, such as bread, beer, and meat, and worked in shifts. Inscriptions found at the sites indicate that many of these laborers considered themselves part of a prestigious national project, contributing to the glory of the pharaoh and the afterlife. This understanding challenges a long-held myth and highlights the sophisticated logistical and labor management capabilities of ancient Egyptian civilization. During the American Revolutionary War, the colonists faced a severe shortage of gunpowder, a critical resource for their fight against the British. To overcome this, the Continental Congress, in 1775, urged its citizens to collect saltpeter from a rather unconventional source: cave dirt and even human and animal waste. Saltpeter, potassium nitrate, is a key ingredient in gunpowder. Farmers and colonists were encouraged to collect nitrogen-rich dirt from caves, barns, and outhouses, which was then leached to extract the nitrates. This desperate and somewhat unpleasant effort, known as the saltpeter patriotism, was crucial in sustaining the Continental Army's limited ammunition supply throughout the war. It demonstrates the ingenuity and resourcefulness required to maintain a rebellion against a well-supplied superpower. The Great Fire of London in 1666, which devastated much of the city, inadvertently played a significant role in improving public health. Before the fire, London was a sprawling medieval city characterized by narrow, winding streets, overcrowded timber-framed houses, and poor sanitation. This environment was a breeding ground for diseases, including the bubonic plague, which had ravaged the city the year before. The fire, which burned for 4 days, destroyed an estimated 13,200 houses, 87 parish churches, and St. Paul's Cathedral. While a catastrophe at the time, the rebuilding effort led to wider streets, improved building materials, stone and brick instead of wood, and better sanitation. This modernization, coupled with the fire's destruction of disease-carrying rats and fleas, dramatically reduced instances of plague and other infectious diseases in the city, making London a healthier place to live. The tradition of throwing rice at weddings to wish the newlywed couple fertility and prosperity is an ancient custom with roots in several cultures, dating back thousands of years. Rice, a staple food in many parts of the world, has long been associated with abundance, fertility, and nourishment. In ancient Roman times, instead of rice, people would throw wheat or barley as symbols of fertility. The tradition evolved, and rice became popular in Asian and later Western cultures for its symbolic meaning of showering the couple with good fortune, bountiful harvests, and numerous children. While still practiced in some places, modern concerns about the impact on birds or waste have led to alternative traditions like throwing birdseed, confetti, or blowing bubbles. Before the advent of modern air conditioning, ancient civilizations devised ingenious methods to keep cool in hot climates. The Romans, for instance, used complex aqueduct systems to channel cool water through the walls and under the floors of their homes and public baths, acting as a primitive form of radiant cooling. They also designed their villas with open courtyards and strategically placed fountains to create evaporative cooling effects. The Persians developed wind catchers, badgers, elaborate tower structures that captured prevailing winds and channeled them down into underground rooms, often over water, to naturally cool the air. These examples highlight a sophisticated understanding of airflow, evaporation, and thermal mass long before the invention of mechanical refrigeration, demonstrating remarkable architectural ingenuity. The phrase, "mind your PS and QS," meaning to be careful about one's behavior or manners, has several debated origins, but one of the most popular theories comes from 18th century English pubs. Bartenders, particularly those serving ale, would keep a tally of pints, P, and quarts, Q, consumed by patrons, often on a chalkboard or slate. To ensure customers paid their full tab, and to remind them not to exceed their credit, bartenders would frequently tell patrons to mind your PS and QS. This served as a polite yet firm reminder to keep track of their drinks and conduct themselves appropriately. While other theories suggest origins in printing, referring to the easy confusion of P and Q in typesetting, or in schoolrooms, referring to good penmanship, the pub origin remains a widely accepted and colorful explanation. The Maginot Line, a vast and elaborate system of fortifications built by France along its border with Germany in the 1930s, was considered impregnable. It featured interconnected underground fortresses, artillery turrets, barracks, and even railways. However, this massive defensive structure was largely bypassed by the German army during their invasion of France in May 1940. Instead of attacking the heavily fortified line directly, the Germans executed a successful flanking maneuver through the Ardennes forest, which the French considered impassable for tanks, and then swiftly advanced into France, rendering the Maginot Line largely irrelevant to the main fighting. This strategic blunder by the French High Command highlighted the pitfalls of relying on static defenses against mobile warfare, and the line ultimately failed to protect France from occupation. Before the development of modern dentistry, people used surprisingly varied and sometimes bizarre methods for cleaning their teeth. The ancient Romans, for instance, used a paste made from urine and pumice for whitening and cleaning. The urine's ammonia acted as a bleach. Other cultures used twigs with frayed ends, chewing sticks, charcoal, salt, or even abrasive materials like crushed bones or oyster shells. The Egyptians used a mixture of ox hoof ashes, burnt eggshells, pumice, and myrrh. The Chinese were among the first to use bristled toothbrushes, dating back to the 15th century. These diverse practices underscore humanity's long-standing concern for oral hygiene, even with the limited scientific knowledge and resources available in past eras. The Post-it note, a ubiquitous office supply, was invented by accident. In 1968, Spencer Silver, a scientist at 3M, was trying to develop a super-strong adhesive. Instead, he created a low-tack, reusable, pressure-sensitive adhesive that stuck to surfaces but could be easily peeled off without leaving a residue. For years, this invention had no clear commercial application. It wasn't until 1974 when his colleague, Art Fry, a church choir member, became frustrated that his paper bookmarks kept falling out of his hymn book. Fry remembered Silver's adhesive and realized he could apply it to paper to create a temporary, repositionable bookmark. This serendipitous collaboration led to the development of the Post-it note, which 3M launched in 1980, revolutionizing organization and communication in homes and offices worldwide. The famous tale of Lady Godiva, riding naked through the streets of Coventry, England, to protest her husband's oppressive taxes, is most likely legend rather than historical fact. The earliest accounts of her naked ride appear in the 13th century, almost 200 years after her supposed death in the 11th century. Historical records confirm that a Lady Godiva, Godefroy, was a real Anglo-Saxon noblewoman, married to Leofric, Earl of Mercia, who was indeed a powerful and wealthy landowner in Coventry. She was known for her piety and generosity to churches. While her historical existence is certain, the detail of her nude protest seems to be a later embellishment, perhaps originating as a cautionary tale or a romanticized myth, designed to highlight the benevolence of the nobility or the suffering of the common people.